The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Frankly Speaking. I'm your host, Frank Saberic, and I'm pretty excited today. As I usually talk about, like in the summertime, I make my annual vacation to a place called the Soul Fest. It's at the Gunstock Ski Resort area. It's a Christian music festival called Soul Fest. It lasts 3 days, and I've been there since 2012. I've been there at least one day. And I usually get a lot of interviews from a lot of like folks that promote their organizations there, various Christian organizations. And today we have the first one from the Soul Fest 2019. I'm proud to say is an organization called New Life Home. And that's, I guess they help young women or women battle abuse, whether it's drug, alcohol, or I assume domestic abuse. I guess we'll talk about that in a second. And I'm very blessed to have here as my guest the founder and executive director, Grace Rosado. Grace, how you doing today?
Great. It's great to be here. Thank you so much.
Okay. And also the program director, who I understand was a resident also of the program, as well as the current program director, Jessica Aquino. Jessica, how you doing today?
Very good, thank you.
Excellent, excellent. So I guess we'll start. Grace, I don't know if you'd want to go first, telling my TV audience, a little bit about yourself and how you founded and got started with New Life Home. Organization.
Sure. I'd be glad to.
Sure.
In 1977, my husband was doing some volunteer work at a prison, and a young man approached him and said, my wife is on the streets. She's doing drugs. Can you find a home for her, a program? She needs a program. So my husband came home, and we started talking about it and started looking for a faith-based residential program for this young woman. And to our amazement, there wasn't one faith-based home for women that were struggling with substance abuse issues at that time. And so we began searching and really investigating, saying, where can we send this young lady? And we had friends that had a program in New York City, and we referred her there. The only problem was that the program had bars on the windows. It was inner city. It was a very different atmosphere than a young lady coming from New England was used to, and she didn't last. And that was the beginning of the Lord really putting something in our hearts about women in need and women that were struggling with substance abuse and not having program. You know, there are a lot of programs for men, but at that time, there was not one single program dedicated to women. And so for 2 years, we traveled. We shared in churches what we wanted to do because we felt like God put it on our hearts. We need to begin a program for women. And so we traveled, and anytime a door would open and a church would have us or an organization would allow us to speak, we would share with them, this is what we want to do. We want to open a home, a Christian home for women. And it took us about 2 years before we found our first home. And because we don't take state or federal funding, it was a little more difficult. All of our funding comes through churches, individuals, small grants, foundations, businesses that would donate. And at the time, we didn't have a lot of money to buy a home. Where were we going to have our startup funds? We looked at all kinds of beautiful homes, because one thing about what we felt was that we wanted a home that would not be in an inner city environment, but taking the women out of that environment and placing them in a beautiful area where they could be away from the drug scene and have time to heal. And so we weren't just going to accept just any property, but we were looking at beautiful homes, mansions, you name it, but we didn't have any money. And one day my husband saw this article in the paper, said, rent with the option to buy. And it was in Chester, New Hampshire, on 32 acres of land, lease with the option to buy. And actually, that was our first home. And we began there in Chester. And then we moved on to Manchester, New Hampshire, where we are now. We have 3 homes there. But those were our beginning days in Chester.
So how many residents right now do you have?
We have 15 women. We can have 15 families at a time. Now, just recently, we've had 30 children along with their moms in the program. And the ages range from, right now, I think 6 months old, the newest addition to our family, 6 months old, to a teen, 17 years old. So we have quite a vast range in ages for the women and their children.
Okay, so before I get into like specific details, Jessica, you were a resident. How did you come about getting involved with the New Life home?
So my family attended a church in New York that supports New Life. And so when I was struggling with my own addictions, I had a family member that attended the church and was familiarized with New Life. And so when I was going through the challenges that I was going through, they recommended that I'd come. This was in 1996. Wow. And at the time I was, my addiction was alcohol. I had become an alcoholic from the age of 15 years old and just struggled. I had a very rough lifestyle. I brought up in a broken home, and my dad was a heroin addict and a gangbanger, and my mom ended up raising us on her own. And at the time, she wasn't affiliated with anything faith-based when she was raising us. I would say my dad moved out maybe when I was 7 years old, and so I went into a depression and just spiraled down into all kinds of addictions. And then I had a child. I got married and I had a child, and I married someone who was struggling as well. And so my mom, when she became a Christian, she prayed for me, and so did my daughter. And they attended the church in New York, Christ Tabernacle, and they talked about New Life. And so I came to New Life, and I was there for about 2 years as a resident. And then I graduated the program, and I stayed on an additional 5 years as a staff member. But I want to, before I talk about becoming a staff member, I want to talk about my experience, because I think that that's very important. Because I said, I had some struggles, but, I was really, really in a very bad place in my life where I wanted to end my life, and I just had no hope. And when I got to New Life, I started to very quickly, I started to see that my life wasn't intended to be what it had been the prior years. The first thing I could say that happened is walking into the doors. I'll never forget till this day, but walking into the doors of New Life, every addiction I felt was gone. I didn't feel like smoking. I didn't feel like drinking. I didn't feel like getting high. I felt an overwhelming sense of new beginning and hope. And so there are classes that I was taking, very individualized personal studies, palatable for someone who's detoxing, learning about God and freedom and salvation and what it is to be healed and how to overcome unforgiveness towards my dad and depression and things that get you to a place of addiction that you usually are not spoken of. So that was, my beginning journey. When I realized that I was free from drugs and alcohol, my eyes were opened and I thought, wow, life is really great. It feels good to be sober, to think, to make decisions, to love my child, to look forward to the next day, and to hope for more. So initially, I had a sense of hope, but by the time I was in the midway process of the program, I knew there was hope. And so I continued to take classes, GED classes. I started working, going back into the community. I did community service at the church that Grace and Pastor Rosado pastored at one time. So I got involved in a lot of community service and learned that there was so much that I could actually do that I never did before. And then I eventually I graduated. I continued to work, but there was a pull in my heart to want to give more back to New Life. So eventually I resigned from my regular job and I started to work in the home. And I met other Jessicas that I was able to love on and help walk them through and see that, there was a hope and that their lives could be turned around and they can have their children and their children's life can be turned around and, pretty much paying it forward, if that makes sense. And talking about my experience with God, because you can't forget about God and the whole process. So it was an amazing experience in my life. Probably, I would always say to people, the first time I ever made a right decision was the day that I decided to go to New Life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is there an age limit on how young or how old you have to be, or could any woman?
Yeah, it's normally 18 and over.
18 and over, okay.
Average age is mid-20s.
Okay, I would assume
Usually,
that.
right. That they're finally ready to commit. When we first started, we just started taking in single women. But early on, we realized one of the biggest barriers in women getting help is, what am I going to do with my children? And we decided early on, oh no, we've got to take the children in along with their moms, because with that comes healing. There's a healing process because the children many times are traumatized by their past situations, by what they've seen, what they've gone through, and they need healing as well in their lives. And so bringing them together has been such a tremendous blessing because they grow together and they heal together and they become this family that they were probably never were before.
So would a single woman who has no children be mixed in with a woman who has kids?
Yes. Yes, maybe not room with her, but certainly in the program. And they love on each other. It's like a big family. And they love the children, and the children love them, and it becomes a family.
And also, now on your website, you say that you battle abuse. And I guess the most common is, what I'm just assuming is drug, alcohol, and domestic violence. There's no other type of abuse that...
Well, I mean, we're dealing with the sex trafficking now as well.
Yes.
That's also a part of what we're dealing with today. Am I right?
Yes.
mean, you might talk more about that, but it's happening more and more.
And do you facilitate all the women who have the same problems, or are they mixed? Could you, domestic violence lady, be in with a drug problem lady, and right next to them is an alcohol
Well,
abuse?
you know, in these days, it's a little bit, everyone has a little bit of everything, to be honest with you. It's not, oh, you're just an alcoholic. Oh, you just take drugs. No, if you're out there, many times it's a little bit of everything. Am I right?
Yes.
It's a combination of a lot.
Okay.
And I think too, if I could just share this, that although we cater to many women, the program has elements that it's geared toward the specifics of the women. So they may join in a class that is about sexual abuse, let's just say. That may not be something that everyone has experienced. So we probably wouldn't have a woman involved in a class about sexual abuse for women who have been trafficked. But then there's general classes that they all have, their self-image. If you take a closer look at these women, we don't want to just brush off the dust that brought them in. We want to get to the root of why they've come to where they've come from. And the majority of the time, there's self-esteem issues, there's abandonment issues. When my dad left and I was 7 years old, I felt completely isolated and alone. And I felt completely unprotected because my dad wasn't around. And so that, not having him or someone to replace that in my life, that caused a whole lot of issues as I was growing up. And so when you look a little closer into these women's lives, there's a lot of neglect, rejection, and when they feel rejected by people like their parents, they reject themselves, and that's where the drugs and alcohol begins to fulfill, or sex trafficking, some of the other issues that are coming up now. I mean, we have a large percentage of women with us that have been sex trafficked, and some of them didn't even know they were trafficked until they were educated about sex trafficking.
Unbelievable. Now, do these women have like visitation rules? Can their like parents visit them, or quote unquote friends visit them, or?
We family are able to visit. We say positive influences, not their past friends or past associates, are not allowed to come and visit. That's their past life, and we try to help them, separate themselves for a while from the old relationships, because that's not going to help them in their growth for their future.
Okay. And now, how long does the average woman stay at New Life Home? A year, 2 years, or?
An average of 24 months for the program, 18 to 24 months for the program. And then we have transitional homes as well. And maybe you want to talk about, after they complete the program, some of them are going to college, getting jobs, saving money. We just don't put them out there. Oh, you're through with the program. Great. See you later. No, we want to see them through the next steps to make sure that they're going to be successful. So we have the transitional housing. Maybe you want to talk about a little bit about that, what that does and how that helps them.
Sure. So once they graduate, there's an additional 8 months, if not longer, that they can stay in one of our transitional homes. And the only purpose would be them going to school, trying to get their degree. Some of them go to trade school, and we don't want them to worry about having to find a place and try to finish trade school and take care of their kids and work. So I would say by the very beginning of their third step in the program, it's right before they graduate, we start going over goals. We have this class called career planning, and we start talking about where they're going to be in their future. Based on some of their plans is if we'll offer them the transitional aspect. Some of the women, like we have women who have their MBA, who have their bachelor's degree, and once they're done with the program, they're ready to go back into the community and start working. But others are getting their bachelor's degree and their GED, or going to trade school. So transitional housing really helps them during that time.
Because one of my next question is, I never can pronounce this word, recidivism rate. So the people who return because it didn't quite work out for them. Do you have a good percentage, I would assume?
We have a great percentage of success, I believe, because of the spiritual aspect and because of the length of the program. Those two things together really help a woman succeed. And we're just not brushing them through, like Jess said, but we are seeing them through every step of the way and helping them along the way. When they're first out in the community, they're coming back and they're talking about what they're going through, and maybe things that they're dealing with, that they're having to, temptations that they might have out there that they haven't faced in a while, or financial issues that they need help with. So we help them budget, we help them with monies, saving money, getting on their feet so that when they do leave, they're ready. They're ready.
And some of them want to stay. Some of them want to intern. Some of them want to become staff members. One of our final process steps, which is our fifth step, we call it our fifth step, is if the women want to stay and become a staff member, we will help them get their recovery coach certification, and they can come back on and be a coach to these women. We try to encourage them to take a little break before then, but that's our fifth step. And let's just say hypothetically they didn't want to work with us, or they didn't want to become a recovery coach. They certainly come back to volunteer. They want to come back for Christmas, for Thanksgiving. They're like a family member at that point. Just recently I had a bonfire, and I put it on social media. All of these graduates came, their kids. We had a blast.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
It's their home. It's their home.
It is.
And I can say for myself, as a graduate, what happens there is so unique. Because before you come to New Life and you're struggling with all of these things that are going on in your life, you can't imagine that life would be different. When you go through these staff members that are side by side, this is not a kind, sweet place for a woman, right? So when you're detoxing, although you want help, your condition is not, pretty. You go through some ugly times, and they stick by you, and they love on you, and they encourage you, and they take the punches until you're in the right place. And that's something that's very unique, because families give up. They say, you know what, I'm done. I'm tired. You have to go. But then you gain a new family that says, I know you're going through some stuff, and I'm gonna walk you through this process. You're gonna be okay on the other side. They become your family. And so there is an incredible relationship, and the women want to come back and be a part of that.
I would assume in the course of 40 years, since like 77, 78, when you started, there'd be a need for more residential homes.
Absolutely. We have 3 in Manchester, but our next step is going to be in Massachusetts.
Oh.
Yes. And it's just a matter of funding and finding the right facility, but that's going to be our next step, because the needs are so great, and we're getting calls from everywhere, and we just want to be there for women. That's what we're called to do.
Okay. This is kind of like an awkward question, but I got to ask it anyway. So if you have like teenage boys, junior high school age boys, 12 through 18, isn't it kind of awkward there to be in a facility with all women?
Absolutely. And it's very unique that we would have a boy older than 12. Normally we have a cutoff, because for that very reason.
Okay.
It's hard for boys to be living in with so many women, and it's one thing when they're little, and so we have a rule that says, when they're 12. Now we have some graduates that would have older kids, but that's different. They have their own quarters.
Right.
But in the program, no older than 12 in the program. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Okay. Which I think I can understand would make sense.
Sure.
Also, was there ever a push? I guess back in 77, 78, you want to get, something started, the ball rolling to, just have a facility, and you just threw out the name, New Life Home. Was there ever a push in the past 40 years to maybe rename it something more sexier, eye-catching?
Well, actually, the name was from a scripture that we use, John 10:10. Jesus said, "I am come that they might have life, and have life more abundantly." And so because of that scripture, that really tells what we want to do and what we want to see. It's new life in Christ, and it's new life home for women and their children. That's what we call it, new life home for women and children. It's interesting, our first home, we had a sort of a sub name for it, and we had a little, it was out in the woods, and it was on 32 acres of land, and we had this little sign on the tree. And because we trusted God, and we still do for everything, there was a scripture that meant a lot to us, and it was Jehovah Jireh, the Lord will provide. And we had that sign on the tree as they came up the driveway, and it was always a reminder that the Lord would provide. And but really, New Life is a name that is generic. Absolutely, now it's used over and over. When we first started, it wasn't that well used, but now it seems like it's used a lot for different programs and so forth. But for us, it has such meaning. It's newness of life.
Can I just add a quick,
Sure.
just a quick story behind the name? That when my sister was talking to me about getting help, I didn't hear anything she said. All I heard was, if you go to New Life. And I thought, if I could get a hold of a New Life. I didn't hear anything else she said except New Life. She was talking about the program. I didn't realize in the moment that that was the name of the program. Of course, at some point I realized that I'm going to, but to me, that name is so powerful that I can't imagine anything being sexier than having a new life. And I get your question.
Yeah.
Totally. Because, you wanna gravitate.
Jessica's home. Ashley's home.
Yeah, but it's,
Yeah.
and that sounds great. But when you're there, New Life is, it's amazing.
It's
yeah.
a reality.
Yeah.
And that's what happens when women come in and they're broken and they're hurting and they're coming from such a hard place. For them to find a new life with purpose, it's incredible. It really is. And it is a new life coming forth.
Yes. Yeah. I love the name.
Two things I want to bounce. We're not really getting off the beaten track because you deal with like women who are getting off drugs. But well, first of all, marijuana. I guess in Massachusetts they passed a law where I guess an ounce of marijuana or whatever's in a joint is what they call a misdemeanor. And that doesn't affect a person's criminal record. And it seems like when a person goes like for a job and they've been busted for drugs, I mean, that could haunt them for the rest of their lives. But like the people in Massachusetts, if they just have a joint in their car, they're not going to be busted. And I believe in New Hampshire, the law is marijuana is still a illegal drug, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Would that help your recidivism, whatever that word is, that rate better if they had a law like that in New Hampshire?
I don't think it really affects us as far as the program. If a person has a little bit of marijuana or a lot of marijuana, it's a drug. And
Do you believe it's a gateway drug to more serious things like cocaine and heroin?
yes, I do.
Absolutely.
Okay.
No doubt.
And there's no way that either one of you would sit with your kids and smoke marijuana, knowing
Never.
what you know.
Never.
way.
Never.
No way.
No.
Okay. Now, moving right along from one drug to the other, the opioid crisis in New Hampshire, which I guess in the past presidential election, it became a big deal. I guess a lot of people were confronted the Republican presidential candidates, and they were all stunned that New Hampshire would have a big opioid addiction or overdose problem. Do you think the proposal to have a southern wall, a barrier built on the southern border of the United States would help it somewhat?
I'm not really into the politics of the way drugs are coming in. They're coming in different ways. In fact, I was at a meeting in Washington, and DEA was talking about how drugs are coming in by drones and different methods these days.
Yes.
And so when we talk about a wall, perhaps anything that would help and hinder drugs from coming in so quickly, but drugs are coming in no matter which way, they're coming in. And so our position is we've got to help the ones that are looking for help. That's where we stand. We're just the help. As far as the solution, I don't know what all the solutions are as far as keeping drugs out. There are so many ways that drugs are coming in through our borders. Many ways.
Okay.
Yeah.
But even if they did have a southern wall a barrier on the southern border, like one politician whose name I won't mention, but let's say that's successful. I mean, you guys are still going to have more than enough residents and looking for more facilities to get more residents.
Of course.
Yes.
Of course.
Okay.
We're talking, that's probably a small portion of where the drugs are coming from. I mean, it is part of, but they're coming from very different ways than they did before. And yes, they're coming across the border for sure, but they're coming by sea, they're coming by drones, they're coming, various ways.
Yeah. And there's definitely no way that's going to stop that cold.
No.
Okay. So moving right along on how we met, Soul Fest, the annual Soul Fest. Were you happy with? Well, first of all, you've been in have an organization for 40 years. They've celebrated the past 22, 23 years of Soul Fest Christian festivals. Is this the first time you've had a display table?
It is the first time we've had a display table. We have gone up there and enjoyed Soul Fest and the concerts and speakers and so forth. But this is our first year that we had a table, with material, giving material out. Yeah.
Okay. So do you think it was a success?
Well, you can talk about that maybe.
Absolutely. I thought it was a success. We made a lot of contacts. We were able to connect with other programs as well, which is always great to connect with other programs that are working on the same exact mission that you're working on, saving the lives of people that are out there suffering from this disorder. We thought the couple of families came, they enjoyed the concerts and meeting different people. So yeah, it was definitely a success.
The video that was done.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. We had a video. It was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
We made a lot of incredible contacts while we were there. Yeah.
Okay, so with all with nothing unforeseen circumstances coming up next August for Soulfest 2020, do you think you'll have another display table?
I would say so. Absolutely.
Okay.
It's very positive.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So, what now? Do you mention earlier that New Life Home is not it's non-denominational?
That's correct.
Not associated with any
one particular denomination. No, we're non-denominational, and we get support from about 50 different churches that support us on a monthly basis. And we get support from individuals, from foundations, businesses. That's how our work is supported.
Okay. And also, like, you have, like, residents like Jessica go around to churches and do, like, legacy lectures or do testimonials.
Right. Well, we have supporting churches and any church that would like us to come and bring a program. And what we do is, it depends on the church. They might want a story of a young lady. They might want her testimony. They might want a history of the work. They might want to know what the needs of the work are. So it depends on the church. But yes, we travel to different churches and share about the work, and most of the time we will bring several of the young ladies. Sometimes it's graduates, sometimes they're in the last phase of the program, sharing what God has done in their lives, because we want to bring encouragement to the churches and the community. So much is said about the opiate addiction and this epidemic, but I like to tell people, but there's a solution, and there are people that are getting help, and there is hope. I want people to understand there is hope. This is not a hopeless situation. People's lives can change with the help of the Lord. Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
So in addition to going to like churches every Sunday, do you have like prayer groups or Bible studies or something to that effect too?
We do. We have Bible studies. We have chapel services on a weekly basis. We have prayer meeting on a weekly basis.
We have
And
teachers coming
we
in.
have teachers coming in and teaching all kinds of classes, anything from parenting to, as I mentioned before, we have GD. We have electives where the women are learning how to sew, how to cook, how to do life skills. So we have both. We have the spiritual and we have the practical components on a weekly basis. It's a pretty busy schedule, but this is how the women regain access to the things that God has for them.
So is it sort of like a school type setting in the fact that they take classes and courses and stuff like that?
Yes. And you have a structure, you have a schedule. 7:30 wake up, 8 o'clock breakfast, and the moms are responsible to eat with their children, to get them ready for school, just as you would a normal home, because we want to train them up as well and have that structure. Many of them are coming from a place where they've lacked structure in their life for many years due to drugs or whatever else that was going on. So we have a full schedule. It is a comprehensive program that you take a person from day one to their future and having a job, having skills, being able to work, being able to have an apartment and live on their own. It's to be self-sufficient. You're empowering women. Part of our ministry is empowering them.
Now, do they also have a chance to like exercise a little bit,
Yes.
doing hikes,
Yes,
bike riding? I don't know.
Oh,
We
absolutely.
We actually have a partnership with the YMCA. So we have instructors come in and do yoga and Zumba and low impact aerobics. In the summer, we like to take them on a run. We like to do hikes. But for the most part, year round, we have a wellness program, which we're very excited about. And we also have a partnership with NeighborWorks. They come in and they do a financial workshop with the ladies. So they teach them about credit, about saving, how to write a check, how to
Budget.
how to budget. And the program is amazing because at the end of the program, they help the women how to buy a condo or a home. So it's pretty amazing to see, again, some of the women. We've had women come in shackles right from prison. We've had women come in that were living in their car. So for them to go from that to buying something, we have a lady now, I won't say her name, but we're super excited because she came in shackles and she's in the process where she's looking to buy a condo at this point. She's ready. We're so excited. She's getting her bachelor's degree. She already has a degree in nursing, but she's getting her bachelor's in psychology, and she's doing phenomenally. So we have a couple of partnerships with the community in helping the women get to where they need to be. So there is internal classes, but there's also external relationships. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. And do they want a couple of things off the wall? Do they teach them how to cook if they don't already know how to cook?
Yes.
And nutritionally.
Yes.
I mean, we're not just eating
Absolutely. Oh, no.
chips and cookies, but
Absolutely.
Well, the YMCA, the partnership we have with them, it's not just exercise. We do have a nutritionist that is working with the ladies, teaching them what to eat, how to cook certain meals with whatever we have. So they teach them how to budget. You don't have to, if you want to eat healthy, you don't have to spend a ton of money to eat healthy. So they're teaching them all kinds of ways to it be incorporated in our holistic mission. Because New Life is a program that believes that every woman and their child could be completely successful in a holistic environment. So we don't do any kind of drugs. We don't do, I don't know if you mentioned this before, Suboxone or
No, I didn't.
methadone. It's completely 100% holistic.
Abstinence.
Yeah.
so isn't there some like I don't know. Well, I've never been on cocaine or heroin that they have to take something like methadone to ease off the drug.
Well, you can go through detox, and that's what we have them do prior to coming in, to go through detox. But to continue on those drugs in the program, we don't do that. They have to be detox prior to coming in.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay. And so is there also any courses on, you're talking about jobs, like what to say and not say in an interview? that would be
Yes.
a very practical, worthwhile course.
Of course. Yes.
So we do mock interviews, resume writing. We work with them on looking for work, how to communicate, body
Their
language,
appearance.
their appearance. It's a class that I'm actually working with the ladies now. It is so much fun. They're loving it. They're so excited about what the next steps are. And I think that, believe it or not, a lot of them, by the time they get to that place, they're in such a good place that it's an easy class. You can't teach a class like that when they're first coming in.
No.
It's
Yeah.
when they're close to moving on. So yes, we have classes to prepare them to go out into the community and to apply for a job. We don't ever encourage the women to go out and go on public assistance. None of them ever go back and do that. If anything, they become an answer to the community and to society.
Excellent. And I was thinking of one practical course. I don't know, but I would assume that a mechanic or an auto service place would be more than happy, especially for females, to come and show them like how to change a tire, how to change the oil in their car, basic car maintenance. That would be a practical course too. And
It is. It's interesting because we were talking about that recently, that we wanted to partner with an organization that would do that because, yes, our women are independent and they're empowered and they're doing well. But that is something that we're actually in the process of embarking, on the opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, it's important. But we've gotten calls, throughout the years, graduates
Yeah.
that would call and go, I need some help. I have a flat. Can somebody come and help me? Yeah.
or how to buy a car.
Oh,
that would be a good course too.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
That's
Lord
a big
have
one.
mercy.
Yeah, that's a big one. And part of the Neighbor Works is helping them to budget even for a car.
Yes.
Because that's important, especially in our communities where, the schedule for buses and, we have very
need a
limited.
car.
You need
Yeah.
a car. And you have children and you're dropping them off at school or daycare and, you got to get back to work or back and forth.
Yeah.
It's very important.
Okay. And also, I was just thinking that your organization, you said that you take support from churches, like a dozen or so churches support New Life Home. But people can go on your website if they're like blessed, like listen to your testimony here today, and go on either like a one-time donation or a reoccurring donation,
Right.
and donate to New Life Home.
Yeah, newlifehome.org. Absolutely. This is the only way our home is supported. Our homes are supported, and we appreciate all the support we can get. More is going out than coming in because we meet all of their needs. They don't pay when they're there. We don't have food stamps or welfare. They're not on any of that. They don't pay to be there. We don't have insurance. So when they're coming through the door, we're saying to them, we're going to take care of all your needs for you and for your children.
Yes.
So that's a big commitment for us. And it takes lots of money, lots of funds to be able to do that, to meet the needs of everybody. Yes. So we appreciate it.
Yeah, so I was just telling my studio my TV audience that if they're blessed what they hear
Oh,
today,
that'd be wonderful.
to definitely consider giving like a one-time
Oh, that would be
or
wonderful.
recurring.
Much needed. Thank you.
Yes.
Definitely. So I think I exhausted my questions here, but if my producer told me we have almost 13 minutes left. Is there anything that we've talked about which you'd like to elaborate on, or something that we did not bring up that you'd like to bring up at this point?
Wow. I would say the need for a program dealing with women and their children is so important. I think that there are very few places that will bring in the whole family. And the statistics say that every 15 minutes, a baby is born addicted. So think about the needs of women and their children. One of the unique parts of New Life is the child aspect, because these children are dealing with trauma. These children, some of them have been in foster care, and so we're bringing them, reuniting them with their moms. They're growing again with their moms, but there's trust issues. There's a lot to deal with when you're dealing with the children that have been out there. This past year, I think it was 2017, if I'm not mistaken, but in New Hampshire, we had 300 orphans because their parents passed away from drugs, from overdosing on drugs. I never dreamed in all of my years, 40 years doing this, that I would see this happen, that there would be orphans left because of drug addiction. The needs are so great. And, people say to me, Grace, you've been doing this a long time. But every day I see another young lady that's in need. I see another young lady coming through the doors hurting. And, her outward might be hard. She might look like, she's a mess. But what I see is the potential. I see a young lady who can become whole. I see her potential when she walks through that door, and that's what keeps me going. I say, oh, I want to help her. And then I'll say, did you see her little boy? Did you see her little girl? We can talk about the programs that are out there, but there's such a unique part of New Life that deals with children. And I think people have to understand what that means when a child or children are helped along with their moms. It's such an important aspect of the ministry. Yeah.
I think also when the mom is helped to the capacity of restoration, you break the generational curse onto the child. Like now you're passing a total different baton onto this child. When I think of my childhood, and my mom didn't do drugs, but my dad did, and his dad did drugs, and his dad, right? And so it was something that was
Generational curse.
generational. Yes. And when I look at my kids, none of them, because of that one decision, none of them, I was just talking to my son earlier this morning, and he was telling me, I've never had a sense of wanting to do any kind of substances, even in the midst of the pressure of school. He said, I've never felt tempted to do that. And so when you think about what's happening on a day-to-day basis for these children, as Grace mentioned, some of them come from homes where they were the ones administering Narcan to their parent. Roles were switched. They were they felt like the parents. So they come in thinking, you're not going to tell me what to do. I'm going to tell you what to do, Mom. I'm going to feed you. I'm going to tell you when you need to go to bed. Why? Because they had switched roles. And so it takes time before they take off the hat of the responsibility of being an adult, and they start portraying actions as a child where they no
can
longer
become a
want to
child again.
Yeah, they don't want to be a boss. They want to play. They want to run. They want to create new things. They want to race. You know, they want to play basketball. They want to play an instrument. And just the same way I expressed earlier that I felt, wow, I have hope, and how exciting it was that I realized that I could actually live a healthy life. My daughter, who was in the program with me, she thought the same thing. She thought, wow, this is amazing to see my mom change, or to actually get to see my mom, because there were months and weeks that she wouldn't see me. And so these kids are impacted. I love that you brought that up, Grace, because they're impacted in such a strong way. They see the structure of the home, and guess what? They're dying for structure. They're dying for structure. They're dying for discipline and correction, believe it or not. These kids, before they come into a facility or home that there's, you know, you get up at this time, you actually get to have dinner at this time, you have snack, right? That, for some of them, that's foreign.
Yeah, I remember a young lady, just thinking about it. She came, she was on meth, and wasn't there very much for the kids. And you could tell that they had to fend for themselves. The little girl, I think, was maybe 10, and the little boy was 8. And the first day that they were going to school with us, first day there, we would have their lunch bags all on the table, you know, with their lunch and a snack with every child. And as they go out the door, they're grabbing their lunch. And the little boy says, "Is this for me? Lunch?" And he looked around and he goes, "And a snack?" And then you knew this is something that they did not have for a long time. And the security that, you know, what that brings to a child, that they know they're going to eat a meal tonight. They're going to have food. They're going to have a lunch. They're going to have a snack every day.
Consistently.
This is consistent. Yeah.
And getting back on the women that you have that were abused, victims of domestic abuse, or women who were sex trafficked, isn't there a thing in there like a personality that guys like pimps and stuff like that would look for, on where they can like enable those women, because those women inside want a man like their father, and they think they're going to change men if they hook up with this guy, and they wind up getting abused or sex trafficked.
Well, I think there's a weakness when you have low self-esteem in your life, and you're looking for love, and you're looking for fulfillment, and there's an emptiness in all of us that, you know, people are longing to have fulfillment. And if you go down a certain path, you can end up, you know, on drugs or being sex trafficked or whatever. I don't think it's one particular personality. I think it's the emptiness that draws them into a place where they feel like, oh, I'm going to be loved. Maybe this is love. I've never had love before. I've never known this before. Oh, maybe this is what I need. Maybe this will fulfill me. And then entering, like, you know, even in the drug realm, thinking, okay, this will cover my hurts. But then the deeper you go, the deeper you're bound to it. Am I right?
Yeah, I think that the women, a lot of them have struggled with relationships, period. And so those are one of the things that we're addressing is healthy relationships, sexuality, things that normally you shy away from speaking about in the Christian realm. We don't, you know, we believe that they need to know what does a healthy relationship look like, and what does an unhealthy relationship look like. And some of it, you know, causes them to look really deep and into the things that they've experienced in the past, but it's going to help them for their future, so that their mistakes don't become repetitive, especially with relationships.
Right. Or they think it's the norm.
Right.
And it's not.
Right. Because they come in thinking that.
That's right.
Okay. And even though a lot of times, more often than not, their fathers were a lot like the guys they hooked up with that abused wound up abusing them.
Well, that's true. That can be true. And also, if they have been brought up in a single family,
Right.
situation without a father,
Right.
and they're always looking for that father.
Right.
They're always looking for that male to give them attention.
Right.
Many times, that's what we've seen.
Yes, and I would say I would agree with that because my dad was a drug addict and a gangbanger. I was never attracted to drug addicts or gangbangers. I just wanted somebody to protect me when I was a child. I wanted someone to, love on me. And so I made a lot of poor choices as a result of the absence, as Grace said, because if you don't know what you're supposed to be looking for, you kind of guess and you sometimes can fall into the wrong situations
Right.
that'll bring you down quickly.
Yes.
Wow. And one more thing. Now, you and your husband were pastors before you got involved with New Life.
No, actually, we New Life was first, and then years into it, we started an inner city church in Manchester, and we did that along with the ministry for 17 years. Yeah, yep. So, our hearts have always been to reach out to the hurting, to be there for those that are looking for answers, and we know that the answer is in the Lord, and He makes everything new if you just allow Him to come into your life. New life, that's what it's about.
Wow. So on that note, I think we covered just about everything. So if this show has been a blessing to you, please consider going on newlifehome.org and consider giving a donation, either one time or reoccurring.
It would be wonderful. We appreciate that.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
And any other support, I guess they can get like an email.
We have,
sent.
we have newsletters,
Newsletters.
right, either by email or by mail. There's lots of ways people can get involved if they're interested in volunteering, if they're interested in donating a car, for instance. That's always something that's helpful. If they want to get involved with some of our construction needs, which we always have, they can contact our office. We would love to hear from them.
Excellent.
Thank
Excellent. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully you'll join us for another episode of Frankly Speaking. Thank you very much and God bless.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.